Ever since I discovered the Miyoo Mini, the idea of finding a handheld that's capable enough to run all of my favorite Gen 6 titles in one compact form has been something I'd been searching for. The Steam Deck is brilliant, but it didn't meet the criteria of being pocketable. And in 2025, many companies provide near-perfect solutions for those who are searching for just that. But even so, I felt that two libraries were more of an afterthought since the unique functionality of dual screens meant that horizontal handhelds wouldn't be able to recreate that authentic experience. However, today, AYN has not only done what so many other handhelds promised, they did so at a price that I could stomach. Unfortunately, with all the hype surrounding this new system, some serious flaws have emerged that need to be addressed, and I question, will these specific issues be the deciding factor that ultimately forces many to pass on an otherwise remarkable device? Well, let's find out. Now, before you run and grab your credit card, it needs to be said that as amazing as the AYN Thor is, when considering to purchase a device with the intent on making it your end game system, that strictly depends on your own personal use case. Personally, ever since purchasing the Razer Edge, it left much to be desired when trying to emulate PS2 games, and I've been on the hunt for a system that could do just that. And in 2025, we have so many options to choose from, it can feel a bit overwhelming. But a device under $360, a clamshell design, dual screens for authentic DS and 3DS emulation, the Thor felt like it might just be the very system I've been holding out for. I've read many comments asking if this system could replace the Steam Deck or even become their primary system to play PC games, and for those of you in that camp, I would consider looking elsewhere. Can the Thor handle such a tall order as aforementioned? To my surprise, the answer isn't a flat out no, rather a lukewarm kinda. With third-party apps like GameHub and Winlator, and dedicating an ample amount of time to tinker, sure, you can play PC games, and play some of them quite well, but the emphasis is on some. And by some, I mean don't expect your games to be ready to play directly after install, as you'll most likely need to search what specific parameters are required to get the game to boot and play optimally. Some games may work while others won't. Cloud saves from Steam have syncing issues, and the overall experience for PC gaming feels and is very much in its beta, if not alpha phase. And while we aren't quite there just yet, it is impressive that many people have found a way to boot up their games on Steam on this Android device, and with the max version of the Thor, I'm very curious to see what else is possible in the coming months. But even that being the case, I was pleasantly surprised by how capable this little device is, and it goes without saying, if you're somebody that wants to play PC games on your Thor, then by all means get the Thor Max with the 16 gigabytes of RAM, as that would be highly recommended for those higher demanding titles. But going back to my own personal use case, for me, the Thor met enough of my endgame criteria that the idea of adding yet another Android device to my collection at this point would be superfluous at best. The Thor is compact and pocketable. Just the other day, I had an incident with a water line in my roof, and while sitting outside keeping an eye on the repairs, I had the Thor with me in an environment that I would never consider exposing my Steam Deck to, but since I had hours to kill and because of its size, the Thor sat in my pocket and didn't feel awkward or bulky in the way that I had assumed it would. In actuality, it felt as comfortable as my phone, and being able to just sit back, pop open the device to get some gaming in felt very fluid and convenient. One thing to make mention is I had to turn on the auto sleep feature because I did notice some accidental button presses on the edge of the device will cause it to turn on. At one point, I felt it heat up in my pocket, and I was surprised that even with the lid shut, the device stayed awake. And look at that, what do you know? This issue is now remedied with their latest firmware update. However, there are still some issues that I don't think a firmware update will be able to remedy. For instance, the fan. For the lucky few of you that receive a fan with the special lightsaber edition, you're definitely going to want to reach out to AYN and ask for a replacement, because mine started off sounding like a lightsaber and then went full motorcycle mode, and I couldn't really wrap my head around why it was making this noise. However, the good news news is it took AYN about 8 to 9 days to send me a replacement, and it's pretty easy to replace, but that's not to say this is ideal. On the flip side, the Thor's performance is amazing. I booted up games that I'd had trouble with on the Razer Edge, and the Thor performed as I had hoped and just chewed through almost anything I threw at it. It even opened up new emulators that I'd never experienced before, specifically Vita 3K. Borderlands 2 runs phenomenally once you download and install the correct Turnip driver. In this case, it's Kimchi's version 26 revision 2. It wasn't until going up to Wii U where I found the Thor Pro models start to struggle. Games like Batman Arkham City, while playable, took a considerable amount of time testing and tweaking different Turnip drivers, and still the game isn't an ideal experience. But even so, the Wii U games that are known to run well on emulators like Simu run perfectly fine on the Thor, and it seems like the bottleneck isn't the Thor, rather the emulators themselves, as the notoriously difficult to run Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the 3DS just didn't want to work. That game aside, 3DS emulation is phenomenal. I saw someone complain about input delay, but personally I didn't feel or notice anything off. Games on the Thor are definitely beautiful, but how does it actually feel to play? Now, the first thing you'll most likely notice is going to be how the system feels in your hands. For me, I instantly knew I'm gonna need to mod the trigger buttons, as these flat buttons feel awkward to press. I've watched as many other reviews on this device as possible, and it seems most people are either in one of two camps. Either this form factor doesn't bother them at all, or if you're like me, they feel that the triggers are a bit difficult to get used to. A curved trigger would have been a much better choice, and looking at the more expensive AYN Pocket DS, it seems as though they have a leg up against the Thor, however that system is much bigger. Apart from that, the system does feel great in my hands. The size is a bit smaller than the Nintendo 3DS, and holding them side by side, I do wish AYN opted to make this device slightly bigger to fit adult hands. The 3DS feels more natural to hold, but as you get used to this new system, it does become more familiar and your hands do adapt, although I do find myself reorienting my grip while playing any titles that requires the shoulder buttons. The face buttons are very responsive, and they're not very squishy, rather a little bit more clicky. Here, listen. So if this is something that annoys you, do note that they do make a little bit of noise when pressed. However, each press feels crisp and the D-pad is absolutely amazing. Now the joysticks, however, aren't my favorite. They sit somewhere between the PS Vita and the original Switch. They are much smaller, so any minute movement in whatever direction will sometimes overshoot or undershoot, and it does take some getting used to when coming from full-size joysticks like on the Steam Deck. Now these are serviceable and they do get the job done, but for games like Borderlands 2 on Vita 3K, I do find myself having a bit of trouble for those precise movements. But after a few days with the device, I found myself getting used to not only these joysticks, but the entire system as a whole. Flipping open the screen, it felt smooth yet sturdy, each predetermined angle clicking into place securely. While it does seem like AYN did a fantastic job with the Hinge, I do wish the display had more than just the 3 predetermined angles of viewing. Opening the system fully feels a bit off, and the second to last angle feels as though it would have been much better only by a few degrees further. Now it needs to be said that I am nitpicking here. I'm being very critical with this new device because overall the device feels solid, crafted with care, and it feels expensive and premium. Unfortunately, this review has taken me much longer than I wished, and that's due to a lot of life stuff. I mean, I got sick and my roof started leaking. Just a lot of crazy stuff has happened in the past few weeks, but at this point, I think this works out to our benefit because with the extra time, we have now uncovered certain issues that were otherwise unforeseen, like the Hinge. Just recently, more than a few users on Reddit started to share their issues with the Hinge. Many have begun to notice a tiny hairline crack on the left-hand side of their Hinge. So I grabbed a flashlight and looked closely on mine, and sure enough, there is a very faint line in the exact place others were noticing. And this is very strange because I've seen some people claim that this issue happened right out of the box before they even removed the display wrap. So I decided to reach out to AYN, and this is what they said. This small line we've all noticed is in actuality a mold joint line. If the line is thin and evenly distributed, then we have nothing to worry about. Now this was echoed as well on AYN's Discord channel, and it feels as though this is what their customers customer service team has been directed to tell everybody, but I can't say this puts my concerns at ease, as more Thor owners started to investigate further by popping off the top cover only to find that the crack isn't a superficial mold line, rather an actual crack. Personally, I'm not too worried about my Hinge, and this is probably due to the fact that at this point of owning so many of these retro handhelds, issues like this are unfortunately commonplace. I have tools and experience of modding and fixing and learning to live with these imperfections, but that's not to say that you need to adopt this form of thinking when spending your hard-earned money, because in a just and fair world, this is absolutely unacceptable. But with all that being said, moving on to the displays. AYN really knocked it out of the park with these displays. It feels and looks as if the company that shall not be named crafted this system themselves. The touchscreen is responsive, fluid, and crisp, while indoors, the OLED panel is quite stunning, and with the black model, the blacks in-game are so perfect that it makes the bezels feel almost invisible. Now, something to take into consideration is knowing that while these devices are quite versatile, in order to unlock all the capabilities will require an ample amount of time to set up your new device. Now, this process can be as difficult or as simple as you want it to be, and personally, it took me about 5 days to complete the setup process. For me, I used 3 specific guides. I just wanted to open the thing and get to gaming right away, but with both RetroGaming and Joey's Retro Handhelds channels, their videos really helped me plan my setup process, as this may differ from person to person. I did download the Daishu front end, but I ended up not even bothering with it because I found that using the app Wallpaper Engine, I much preferred this OS look over the front end. Now, a very important caveat I feel needs to be mentioned is, as enthusiastic as I am about this new device, for you newcomers who are just getting into this hobby, I want to stress that there's a bit of a misconception when it comes to the idea of emulation and what is achievable. Emulation doesn't mean you are getting an exact experience as the official systems. For those of us who have been a part of this community for quite some time, we're more than likely basing our judgments on past experiences, and to see a system like the Thor, we have come a very long way. But that's not to say that every game is gonna run perfectly right out of the box, and I just want to stress this point because I feel many of us tend to forget that some of you might get the wrong impression when we rave about these devices. Nintendo 3DS emulation is still in its early phases, and as powerful as these devices are, programs running these games like Azahar aren't perfect, and devs are tirelessly working to update them. So if you're expecting the Thor to run like an actual Nintendo 3DS, you might be a bit disappointed when you find out your favorite game may not even boot. So do some research. There's plenty of resources out there that gives you an idea on which games run well and which ones don't, and I do suggest taking a look at these before making your final decision. With all this being said, should you actually purchase the Thor? Well, I know some of you aren't gonna like this answer, but the answer is no. If I were you, I would wait. Now, this is going to require some patience on your part, but I think that patience will pay off in the long run. Don't be a beta tester like myself, rather let others do the testing for you. Let us find all the flaws and the kinks and just wait for a more refined version too. I mean, companies do this quite frequently. The next batch of Thors might have small things adjusted and fixed, because even as much as I enjoy this system, I still am planning on making a few tweaks apart from the one I just made. So apart from fixing the fan, I still need to make changes to the L2 and R2 triggers, as I'm planning on printing some snap-on clips to make them feel a bit more comfortable, and I'll most likely end up buying some Sakura retro modding PlayStation sticker and buttons, and who knows, I might even end up needing to fix the hinge, but so far I don't have any issues at this point in time. I'll definitely keep you posted on that. But if you're as impatient as I am, and you too are in search for a device that runs Gen 6 games and below phenomenally, with the addition of some Wii U games and proper DS and 3DS emulation, in my opinion, the Thor is worth the price of admission, with the Pro model coming in at $349.99 before taxes and shipping and whatnot. That's just too good of an offer to pass up on. But if 3DS and DS games aren't your cup of tea, then I highly suggest looking at the Retroid Pocket 6 or even the Conquer Pocket Fit, and definitely don't look past the Odin 2 Portal or heck, even the Steam Deck. There are so many options that making a final decision is quite difficult, but I think the deciding factor for you should solely be if DS and 3DS emulation is a must-have, and if so, the Thor is, in my opinion, the the best option at this point. I really want to thank you for being a part of this journey with me. It's now been officially 1 year of pumping out these videos for you guys, and we are now entering my favorite holiday, which is Christmas. And I must say, having the Thor for the Christmas break is truly a blessing, and I am so grateful to those of you who are leading the charge in this hobby. I want to thank all the devs out there who work tirelessly, giving us gamers truly something so special. I want to thank all my fellow retronauts who have already subscribed, and if you haven't, maybe check out some of my other videos, and if you feel like I deserve your subscription, definitely hit that like and subscribe, as it does help this channel grow. Stick around, I have another video coming up after this, and that video is coming up right now.